The Next Level is a group of theater geeks playing Dungeons and Dragons. Here is your Dungeon Master, Rob Card.
Hello, and welcome to The Next Level. This is your recap of Episode 2. So, rising bright and early that morning, our intrepid heroes set out from the farmer's house, the farmer that they'd rescued from some strange insect-like creatures in the previous episode. And fairly quickly, one of the things that happened is, of course, the parties just started to talk to each other as they're traveling through these lands. Leon wanted to know all sorts of things about the rest of the party. What could they do? What magic items do they have? What do they bring to an engagement? Learned some interesting things. Gildy has a musket, which is a bit odd for these parts. Jacob can heal and has some experimental elixirs that he can use. Leon, of course, has some magic and some magic items that can produce light. Mint has boots of speed, sort of, and Gildy has a stick of some sort. And hopefully she'll remember more about her stick. Leon can summon things. Currently was using an umbrella, and there was a question as to whether Leon could summon a small trebuchet, but the answer to that is no. So around the midday meal, Leon also asked about how people felt about the conflict in the south, the Moorish Empire versus the Delhir people. Gildy was the one who had the strongest reaction. Very succinctly said that she hadn't heard anything, but then sort of stalked off. Most of the others were fairly non-committal about what they'd heard. The general sort of knowledge was that the Moorish Navy does have sort of a bunch of, it's a good navy, it's a large navy, they have a bunch of large ships with cannons on them, but apparently not well equipped for river battles, as they had not been doing well on the river in the past summer. The rain, which had started out the day, ends by early afternoon. The sun comes out, and as they're traveling along, a shadow passes over them. It turns out to be a Pegasus, which lands and drops a small package. The party approaches, Talon in the lead, and when he gets there, opens the package and finds out that there's a note specifically for him. Also in the package is a drift globe, an item that can create light as well. And he tells the others that this is from his god, who he says is the Archmage, and they are an ascending god. I'm going to be putting up some more information on the site soon around the different types of gods in this world and the different levels of gods. So keep an eye out on our website, which is thenextlevelgame.com, if you want more information about that. The Pegasus leaves, and they make camp for the night at the Shadow Forest. The first watch goes a little oddly. Tor and Mint see something in the Shadow Forest, glowing red eyes looking back at them, but then they're suddenly gone. So the rest of the night is spent a little bit on ease for all of the watches. Jacob and Gildy discuss some of her other ventures into the Shadow Forest, some of the family she has in the city, and Jacob teaches her to play a dice game, which she is completely thrilled about. Leon and Talon on their watch talk a little bit about magic. They both speak Elvish and sort of have a conversation there. Talon actually opens up a little bit and lets Leon know that they grew up in a monastery or around a temple, and they eventually had to leave, something that they needed to do, that Talon is trained in some illusions, and has been in the Shadow Forest before, fighting some monsters, some shadow wolves and shadows and that sort of thing. The next day, it's been after an uneasy sleep, but no attacks. Talon and Leon, who'd been on the last watch, they have an early breakfast. They sort of do a scout around, still can't find anything. And so the group finally heads into the Shadow Forest. The path that they're following is fairly clear, and as the day starts out, everything seems fine. It seems like just an ordinary forest. It's actually relatively, light and airy, and it's a beautiful day. So people are wondering exactly what's the big deal about the Shadow Forest. They stop for lunch in a clearing, and Gildy tells them this is where the merchant or the merchant guard that they're looking for was taken from. And Gildy finds an area off into the forest where she believes this person was taken, or at least sort of pointing in the right direction. We find out Tor is also good at tracking and survival. Tor helps out, sort of identify a little bit more information about what happened to this person. Looks like they were dragged into the forest and they weren't quite sure exactly what did the apprehending. They follow the path into the forest. They're in the forest proper now, so things are starting to get much darker. The terrain is very difficult and should be slowing them down, but it doesn't really, because Gildy's a ranger and is able to move through the terrain very well and make her entire party move just as well. Suddenly, the entire party is thrown into darkness, which is their first encounter with the shadow smoke, which blinds everybody, even those with dark vision. At this point, Jacob has one of his memories. He is scared, alone, in darkness. Everything is really fuzzy. It's a really sort of rough memory. All he remembers is darkness and being scared. He reaches out to somebody, although there's nobody else there that he can see, and sort of just says, I'm scared, I'm not feeling good, and feels this warmth around his hand. And even though there's no one else there, hears a voice back saying, "I'm here." At which point there's a loud crack or bang of some sort. Jacob was thrown out of his memory and back to reality, and at that point the darkness was starting to fade and the shadow smoke moving off. Short while later, the party was attacked by a group of demon deer. Gildy was hurt quite badly really quickly, and others were hurt as well in that sort of first round of combat. Gildy starts to do a lot of disengaging to run away from the deer just so she can survive. We learn that fairy fire is equivalent to a disco dance party of death. We also learned that we only get one reaction per round, that cover gives your enemies a bonus to their AC, and that apparently when Talon throws his boomerang and it just leaves, that is pretty much the end of combat for him. The party does end up ganging up on pretty much one deer at a time and taking them out. Even though they've gotten some damage themselves, they make it out alive and take care of all the deer. That point, they're all pretty wounded, pretty tired. They settle down for the evening, have some dinner, have a bit of a short rest, do a little bit of healing, and we finally found out what was in Torok's pack. The question for this week for our viewers had been the farmer that they'd helped out at the previous session had left something in Torok's pack. What was it? It turns out it is an amulet of insect slaying, which is very appropriate. So Torok is now proudly wearing that. And party goes down for their rest, but very quickly, once the party is asleep, again, Tor and Mint on watch, notice there's something out in the forest, and a large shadow ogre-like creature comes out of the darkness at them. And that's where we left things off. So we'll see how we can pick things up next time. Next time, just as a note, it will be in 2 weeks on March 23rd. So if you're planning on tuning in on March 16th, we won't be there. Apologies. But we'll see you again on the 23rd. Thank you, and take care for now. We'll see you on the next level.